So, in this video, I'm going to be unboxing and assembling the new Fogstar 12V DIY kit. So this kit was brought out about a week ago, and it's available in 4 variants. So you've got the 280Ah, the 305Ah, 315Ah, and then there's a case-only option as well, which doesn't come with any cells. So these kits are very well priced, starting from $420 for the 280Ah, $430 for the 305Ah, and $440 for the 315Ah, and then the case only option is $150. And all these kits are currently on offer for I think around $350 as well, or on Black Friday deal. And quickly, just before we get into the assembly of the battery, small disclaimer: I'm by no means a professional. I'm purely a hobbyist. This is just my first look at the battery, first assembly. And just a bit of a guide on how you go about assembling it, but I wouldn't advise that you follow everything step by step, because I'm not 100% on the exact assembly of this battery, as there's no instructions. Okay, so let's take a look at what comes inside. So as soon as you take the lid off, you can see at the top here there's a mounting bracket for the BMS, which goes in here. Then this here is the bracket that also holds the PCB, which has all the balance leads on it, which will connect to your BMS to do your individual cell balancing. So we'll just take this off. Looks like it's 2 Phillips screws. Let's just pop these out. Okay, so they're out. This part pops off. Move that to one side for now. So then we've got some foam sheets. Looks like there's 5 there. I'm guessing these are the ones that you put in between and each side of your cells. We've then got some plastic sheets as well with a sticky back. So again, these will be to put between each cell, or should I say rather, on the ends of the cell pack, and on the bottom, the little piece of foam here. And then we've got a box inside, which I'm assuming contains the rest of the pieces for the kit. Okay, so in the box we've got some foam pieces, which look like they go on top of each of the cells. You can see the cutout there for the terminals. Then we've got a 400 Ah fuse. We've got a bracket there, which I'm assuming is part of what the fuse gets mounted to. We've got both of the terminals that goes on the top of the case, this way around. So that's what you'll connect within the battery and outside of the battery. We've got these 2 pieces as well. Not sure what these are for yet. Put them to one side. We've got some rubber pieces, 2 of them. So these are part of the seals that go underneath these switches, I'm assuming to make it slightly water resistant. We've got the bus bars, 3 there, straight ones, or straight with a bit of a curve to go from cell to cell. And then we've got what I'm guessing is the positive one, which goes from your positive most connection to your terminal here on the battery. I'm guessing that links in with the bracket and the fuse to get to your positive terminal. We've also got some more screws in the bag. Not sure what these are for yet. So you've got a pack there. We've got some more. These look like the same ones that we used on the case. We've got some bigger ones there, which I'm assuming are used for either the terminals on the BMS or for the bottom of these, where your positive and negative connections go. Some more little ones, potentially for balance leads. We've got the nuts for the bus bars. Some more smaller ones here. These are probably the ones for the BMS. Some more, plenty of screws.
And then again, we've got more which look like the same ones that come in the case there. So assuming to fill the rest of the ones that were empty. We've also got some leads in here, quite well built. Looks like what, an M6, slightly smaller on the other side. So I'm guessing that is the positive. And then here we've got another cable, which is kind of 2 into 1, which is probably for your negative. So these will be the 2 connections that go onto the BMS. We've also got the switch, which goes on top of the case there, if you can see that. You've got your cable for the BMS. So this goes into the PCB here, which I'll show later. And then we've got another connector there, which I'm assuming goes to one of the positive terminals on the battery. We've got some caps which can go onto the top of these terminals to cover your connections. We've got a temperature probe for the BMS, 2 there, so you can have one on the BMS, one inside the cell. Some more bolts there. And then I think lastly in the box, you've got your 200 amp JK Smart BMS. Yeah. And there we go. BMS. Okay, so case aside, here's the next box. So in this box we've got the Envision cells that go inside the case. These are from Fogstar as well. So I went with the 305 amp hour cells. These are grade B cells, I believe, and they were around $54.99 on the Fogstar website, which I think are now on sale for even less for Black Friday. So we'll move the cells out of the way for now and we'll get started on the construction. Okay, so first step, now everything is out, looks like it's to remove this front panel. So I noticed this piece here is loose, which kind of indicates that we're going to need to get this piece off to put that screw in anyway. And I'm assuming this needs to come off to make all the connections to these terminals easier. So let's take this off quickly. Okay, that's off. Okay, so let's take this front panel off as well. I think it's going to make it easier to put in the pack of cells once it's built. And there we go. So let's move this aside and on to putting together the packs of cells. So here's number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. That way. So the way we want to orientate these is to have the positive on the back right side and then your negative on the top left. So that's the orientation for the first cell, and then you just rotate that for each of the others. So you go from your positive this side to your negative this side, to then your positive this side and your negative this side. Let's start with these foam dividers. So I'm going to take the first one off here, and then let's get the side of this first cell. And let's stick that roughly in the middle. There we go, looks good. And then what we'll do is we'll put one on the inside of this cell as well. This one will be in the middle. We'll skip this side, since there's one in the middle. We'll then move on to the other side of the second cell, remembering to keep it in the correct order in terms of the positive and negative. Then we'll skip this side, so that goes up against there. This piece can go on there, and then we can skip that side, and then the last piece, this one's got a bit of looks like it's bent a bit in the packaging. This piece will go on the end like so. Okay, so slight change. Last time I said the positive goes down at the bottom right end. It's actually the negative that goes down here. So all I've done is just took the cells back out and rearranged them so that the negative is this side. And I'm going to do the same. So negative, bottom right, and then we go to, we'll skip that one actually because we don't want a double pad. So we'll use this one. So we're going to go positive this side, and then we're going to go negative this side, and then I think the end one we're going to have to take this foam pad off and change it around. See how easy this is to get off. Okay. Just stick it back on the other side. Doesn't matter too much if it doesn't stick as well as it did before, because it's going to get compressed down anyway. So, last one at the end here is going to go positive at the end. So a bit of a recap. We've took the plastic sheets, stuck them to the outside, so with the sticky stuff facing that way. So there's a small rectangle one that goes on the bottom. You've got kind of two bigger rectangles that go on the side, and you've got the two squares that go on the end of there, and then the other one goes on the end of this plate there. So what I did was I just put the plate in like that, and then I stuck it in so I knew how much gap to leave at the end. So now what we need to do, now the cells are in the right orientation, so let's just double check them all. So we got negative at the bottom right, then we go positive, so switch the cell around, flip it again, we go back to negative this side, and then positive this side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to turn the battery onto its side, so all the cells are held down by gravity, so like that, so there's no friction of the bottom of the cells. And then we're going to put this piece on top like that, and then we're going to put all the screws in, which should help compress the cells down. So the screws that go in are these ones. It's about an M4 threaded screw with a Phillips head. So these screws go in here like this. It's a little bit fiddly because of the way that the cells are pushing this plate away from the holes. But once you get a few in, it gets a bit easier. I work in a bit of a star pattern. It seems to be easier to get the screws in that way. So I'm going to go to the back now. Try and get this back one in. So you might need to just push down a little bit. There we go. That one's threaded. And then we'll come this side. Get that one in. And then we'll just repeat for the last remaining three. Okay, so that's tightened down now. You can see the sides are a lot more compressed now. You can see there's a slight bow in there, but there's going to be compression holding the cells together. So what we want to do now is you want to get this piece of foam, and it gets placed over the top of these expansion cells, I believe is what they're called, or the expansion windows. I think these tell you when these cells have been ruptured. So that goes in there like that. And then what we want to do is you want to get the BMS plate, which has the PCB for all balance leads, and this is going to go on top of here, so on top of the foam. And then we're going to use the screws that were in it before, these ones, 4 of these. So 2 are already in it, and then there's a bag with 4 in. Just take 2 of those out. And then we're going to screw this in, like so. Oh, we'll just double check as well, make sure that these balance leads are not trapped underneath the plate. So you can see that one there was trapped underneath, and we'll just make sure that one's free as well. There we go. So we're going to screw this down. Get the next few screws in. And there we go. So next step is the bus bars and the BMS. Okay, so now we are going to put the bus bars on. So first one here, we want to be using these kind of straight but with a bit of an arching. So this is going to go from the top right positive to the negative. You just want to drop that on top there like that. You can see the compression of our cells is pretty good because they fit on quite nice. So now we want to go from the positive of this cell to the negative of that cell. You want to just drop that on there like such, and then we want to go from the positive of this cell to the negative of this cell, like that. Okay, so now you want to go through your screws, and you want to find the pack of nuts that come through. These are what we're going to use to tighten these bus bars down. So what we want to be doing is on each of the positive connections for the cells, you want to put down the balance lead on top of the bus bar like this, and then put your nut on top like so. Now we just want to move that out of the way like that. Again, so you want to leave this one for now. So this one here, as marked, is the B minus, so battery minus. So you want to keep that because that goes on the most negative point of the battery. So you start with your most negative, finishing off at your most positive. So we'll leave this one for a second because there's another bracket that goes from the top of the BMS to here, and then we'll put this on top of that bracket. So we'll leave this one for now. So we've got the first balance lead on the first cell. Now what we want to do is we want to take the second balance lead, B2, put that on top of the positive of the second cell, which you can see it's marked in black. And then we just want to screw that down just loosely for now. We just want to get everything in place. Then again, so B3 balance lead, we want to put on the third cell positive. So we'll screw that down as well. I'll just move the lead out like this, just so it looks a little bit neater. And then we want to go and get we'll leave this one for now actually, because there'll be another, probably a bracket that goes on there. Okay, so now you're going to need a 10mm bit, 10mm socket. And what we're going to do is we're going to start tightening down some of these connections. So just a 10mm socket, what we'll do is we'll just move this connector just off to the side just to make it a bit neater and make sure it doesn't interfere. And then we're going to tighten down. Just hand tight for now, and then I'll come back later and torque them up. So we're going to do nut on the negative, screw that down, just hand tight for now, positive, the second cell, the negative of the third cell, and then back to positive on the third cell, like that for now. I'll tell you what, we'll put the nut here as well on this negative one. Like so. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a torque wrench and torque these 6 nuts to around about 8 Newton meters. So I did check the specification on the cells from the manufacturer, Envision, just to double check the torque spec, or if there was one, and there wasn't. So I've chose 8, which I think is a good balance between not enough and too much. 8 is kind of in the good area, I think. So we're going to do those for now. So leaving the negative most terminal and the positive most terminal. We'll do these after we've put the BMS on. Okay, so now we're going to get the BMS and we are going to mount it in place. So it mounts this way. There's some little spacers on the top of this mount. And then what we're going to do, I'll just leave that there for a second. We're now going to go to the bags of screws you received, and we are going to find the 4 that need to be used for this. Here they are. So this is the bag of screws. It's the, gosh, what's that? M1, M2, really small. Drop one there. So we're going to take these screws now and secure the BMS in place. And these look like a Phillips head 0. Okay, so this is the screw, Phillips 0, and we're just going to screw the BMS into place on top of its standoffs. Okay, so next what you want to do is you want to grab this kind of Z-shaped bracket, and then this is going to go on the bottom right side of the battery on the most negative terminal. So what we want to do is you want to put the bracket on top of the stud. This battery negative lead from the BMS PCB will go on top. I'll put one of the same nuts that we use for the bus bars on top, like so. And then we'll just tighten that down to a bit of a hand tightness. So you still want to be able to move this bracket to get these screws in the right position. There we go. Now you want to look through your screws and get this small bag of short screws. Don't confuse them with these longer ones. You want the shorter ones here. We're going to take 2 of these out of the bag. Using the same 10mm socket, we're just going to screw these into the BMS. And we'll tighten those down, not too tight, just a tiny bit further than hand tightness. Now we can tighten down the nut on top of the negative one. And we'll torque this to the same 8 Newton meters than we did before. Again, still don't know if 8 is too much or too little. There's no specifications listed anywhere on the cells or on the kit. So I'm just going to go with 8 again because it's a good balance between not too loose and not too tight. Okay, next what we want to do is you want to get the cable for the BMS. So this goes to the PCB. So we've got what looks like a 10 pin, which will go into this port here on the BMS, and this connector here comes down and goes into the PCB.
Then I'm going to leave this one for a second. Pull both of these off to the side. Then you will go into your pile of cables and grab this cable here. We're then going to use the smaller end on top of this positive most terminal of the battery. You then want to place this cable coming from this 10-pin BMS connector on top. And then on top of that, you want to put this balance lead from the PCB. And then top that off with the same nuts that we used for the bus bars, the M10 nut, or the 10mm. So let's just pull this out of the way over here so it's a bit neater. Tighten that down. I'm not going to fully tighten it yet because we don't know if this needs to move when we're fitting everything later. So we'll keep that for now, like that. Okay, so this next step is fairly important. So we're going to put the cable from the positive side of the BMS to, well, we're going to put it on. So what that means is we're then going to be completing a full circuit through all the cells. So the end of these cables then is going to reach 14 volts. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure nothing gets shorted out, is I'm going to take the end of the cables and I'm just going to wrap some electrical tape around them. Just so when I connect this last one up, I know there's no potential of them shorting out. So there you go, just going to put that one on there. And then I'm going to take this next cable. This is the single to double one. And I'm just going to put some electrical tape on the end of this connector as well. Just until we're ready to use them. Like so. There we go. Cover that one up. Now we're going to take the double cable, like such, meaning the single connectors to double, and then connect them to the negative side of the battery. So, and we need to make sure that these cables are coming on at a bit of an angle as well. So let me just get this go in here. There we go, it's in. And then we're just going to make sure that this cable kind of runs off on an angle because we can't go directly out. And then the next one, I'm just going to run underneath, just behind it, and put it in as such. And then we take the last screw. These screws are the same ones we used on this side. There we go. So we've got them threaded on by hand. Now, I'm just going to get the positioning, hold that in place, and then tighten it down. Just hand tight for now. And just loosen this one up a bit. Let's do this one first. I'm just making sure that the metal part of the lug isn't touching the metal part of the BMS. So I'll tighten this down. Like that. And then this next one will tighten down again. As such. There we go. And again, ends taped off. So now the ends of these should be 14 volts. Since all the cells are all now grouped and we've connected them to both sides of the BMS. Okay, so next what we're going to do is torque the rest of the bolts up. So these ones we did before underneath there. So we've just got the most positive and the most negative. So again, I'm just torquing these to 8 Newton meters. There we go. Now, what we're going to do is you want to grab the temperature sensor probe cable. That is going to go into the furthest port here on the BMS. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tuck one down here, push it down between the cells, just so we make sure it gets a good reading. And I'm going to put the other one down there as well. Push that one closer to the bottom. Keep those there. Next part, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the front part of the case. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fit the fuse and the cables to the terminals. But first, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to fit the terminals and the switch into this plate. Okay, so what you're going to need is you're going to need the red, the black terminals. You're going to need these little rubber washers, and we're also going to need the screws for them as well, which are these ones. So these are black ones, similar to the ones that go in the case, but these have a domed top. So let's get these out of the bag. And again, these look like the kind of 2 to 2.5 sized hex head. You can see there, I'm using a size 2.5. So let's place on the top, we're going to go with the rubber down that way. I think that looks about right. And we're going to place that on top. Then we're going to take the screws and not drop them. Put screws in. And let's just start by getting one in. And we're going to repeat that for all 4 screws. Next, we want to fit the switch, which is this here. What you want to do is you want to take this threaded lock nut off the back, feed the cable through the hole to there, hold it in place, turn it over, lock nut back down, doesn't matter which way it goes on, back down, and screw it down like that. There we go, switch is in and the terminals are in. Okay, so I had to stop yesterday because it turns out on this next part you're going to require 4 of these screws, which I think are 10mm at the top, and they're about an M8 thread, M8 sized bolt. So what these are going to do is these are going to screw into these terminals here, like so. But in my pack, I've only received 2 of these when I actually think you need 6. 2 for the terminals at the top, 2 for underneath, and 2 for here as well. So as it's the weekend, I'm not able to contact Fogstar to get some extra ones. So what I've had to do is I've had to get 2 normal M8 bolts and just cut them to size for now. And then once I'm able to get some extra ones of these, I will replace them. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to screw on these red studs onto the outside of your, the inside of your front panel, like so. Just hand tighten. And then what you're going to want to do is grab your 400 amp fuse. Move this out of the way. This fuse is going to sit on top of these studs. And then you're going to want to grab this kind of L-shaped bus bar. So this bus bar is going to go from the positive. So you're going to put that in there. And then
screw that in. This might be a little bit awkward. There we go. So screw it like that for now, just so it's loose, so we can maneuver it. Then what you're going to do is you're going to push down this tab. I think I'm actually going to maybe put the fuse on top. Yeah. So I'm going to put the fuse in on top. And you're going to want to put one of the screws in. Try and get it threaded. It looks like it is threaded. But if you look, it doesn't quite look right. So I'm going to see if there's a different orientation that you can put this bar in. But it doesn't look so. You can't have it going that way because the handle blocks it. So it looks like it has to come over the top. Let's try putting the fuse underneath and then putting this on top. Okay, so I think we might be in there. Let's give that a tighten down. Okay, yeah, that looks good. And then just going to grab a 13mm socket. And tighten that down. So let's loosen it back up for a second, just until we get the other pieces in. Okay, so now what you're going to want to do is let's just move that to the side for a second. So let's pull the rest of the battery closer. So now what we're going to want to do is take this negative terminal and let's undo this electrical tape. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to attach this underneath the connector on the front. So this might be a little bit awkward. Let me see if I can give you the best shot while trying to do it. So I think what we're going to have to do is try and get on it, screw it in a bit, and then maneuver it once it's going into the case. Let's just try and get this threaded. No, I didn't cut these the best, so the threads are a tiny bit iffy, but I did put them through a tap and die set, so. There we go. One of the threads is a tiny bit wonky. Okay, so that can go in now. We'll just back that off just a tiny bit. Now what we're going to want to do is we want to take the positive and we want to connect that up on top of the stud here. So what we're going to do is, again, put this nut through on top of the fuse and then just try and get it hand threaded. And these are a little bit short. Again, I'm not sure if these are even the correct ones, but these are the only ones left in the kit. I'm not sure if there were supposed to be longer ones, but if there was, I didn't receive them. So I think it's a little bit awkward to screw in because of the lock washer that's on there. So what I'm going to try and do is use a screwdriver instead. It's going to make it a little bit more easier. we've got that going. What we've ended up doing is, so this bracket is now turned around as it's easier to access this ball here to tighten. We've tightened both of these up now, as you can see. And I've tightened this top one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try and get this front cover on, making sure we don't trap any of the cables inside. So it is quite a tight fit. What we might have to do is just loosen up this negative connection and just move the direction or the orientation of the cable. So I think I'm going to hold it off to the side like this, tighten it, and then once we actually get into the case, that clears, and I think we can kind of just push the rest of this cable down, like such. And there we go. It's a bit of a squeeze, but that will end up going on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the screws for the outside of the case. Just put a few down the side there. And let's start putting the screws in for this outside piece. Okay, and the front's all screwed together. Okay, so now it's together. Let's switch it on and then we'll see if we can connect to the BMS. There we go, so you can hear the BMS make a noise there. And what we'll do is I'll switch over to screen recording and we'll check the app out and see if we can find the battery. So now I'm just scanning the QR code on top of the BMS. So I did try using this on the Fogstar, but it didn't work. So what you have to do is you just scan the QR code, go to the link, download the app for whichever device you're on, for Android or iOS. So I'm just downloading it here now. And then once it's connected, you go into the app. Your device should pop up when your battery's turned on. There's a password you have to enter, which is 1234. And then once you're in, you can see the information on the battery. So one thing you have to do is go into the settings. It will ask you for another password, which is 123456. And you can see me here just editing the cell count and changing the battery capacity. Just to note, you have to press OK as well after changing each of those values.